Season 4 Core 2 is right around the corner, so I thought it would be a nice time to explore a fun idea, going through all of Subaru's deaths up until Core 2 begins and ranking them against each other in a tier list. We will evaluate each and every death by, first, how much did this death influence us the viewers? So basically, what I felt after seeing Subaru die like this. Second, how much did this death matter to Subaru himself? Third, the way Subaru died. So just taking a look at how creative as well as surprising that death was seeing it. I will link the template in the description if you're interested in ranking Subaru's deaths. You will have to add some of Season 4 deaths yourself since the tier list doesn't originally go beyond that. Also, the peak tier is only going to have 3, since any more and it feels way too crowded in general. But before moving forward, if you enjoy this type of content, sub up and join the Discord server if you want a chance to talk with me. To start off, please don't get angry if you don't see one of your favorite deaths as highly rated as you would have liked. After all, if there's too many deaths high up, then the tier list sort of loses its point. So I have to be a bit restrictive with the placements. And bear with me since this won't be short trying to go through each and every one of his 26 deaths up until this point. Alright, so this is the quote-unquote first time Subaru dies in the story, dying at the hands of Elsa in the Lou house, where Emilia soon joins him as he makes his promise to save her no matter what. Some of you may already be raising your flags, but I do sincerely believe that this death deserves at least absolute cinema. Not only is this the very first death in the entire series, which makes it special for me, but there's absolutely no competition at all when it comes to the importance of a death more than this one, as this is the one that is what created the path to this story to begin with. Without this death, there would have been no ReZero. Subaru's desire to save Emilia is born in his dying moments here, and so of course it holds extreme importance to him, as well as a factor of seeing their hands barely to be able to hold each other as they're both about to die, which means a lot to me, especially in Stark's Helix, where we once again see this moment with the song playing in the background, which only makes this moment even more profound than it would have already been. In fact, it might even have a chance to climb up a spot, but I'll hold up on that for a second. The second death in Arc 1, Subaru basically gets killed by Elsa again and gets his gut sliced open. There isn't really anything special about this death in particular. It does make Subaru more afraid of Elsa, but it doesn't hold any special importance. But if I were to think of anything, the only upside I can think of is seeing how hot Elsa looks in here. But of course, there's the fact that this is her proper introduction and all, being a character that will go on to influence the far future even as far as the 4th season. I don't think I have anything to talk about this death beyond that, so for that reason, I will be putting this in the I tier without any reluctance. Subaru's third death in Arc 1. Subaru dies more pathetically than ever before, with him basically getting sliced up by the 3 thugs in the alleyway, where he's left out to bleed to his death without anyone coming to save him. There's really no more fitting tier for this besides the fraudulent tier. Sadly, I don't have any words at all to defend Subaru's death in this scene at all, and I have to admit, it's just sort of pathetic to die to a knife attack by a few, at this point, random thugs. Fraudulent tier. Arc 2's first death. Subaru dies while he's asleep and has to wake up to the same scene. This is a death not many people talk about. Arc 2 sadly gets extremely overshadowed by the other arcs in the fandom, and the only thing people talk about for this arc is of course Rem, her torturing Subaru and the cliff jump. So this death has of course fallen mostly out of relevance. Despite that, I genuinely think it's a very nice death. It sets the premise of this arc as a mystery, finding out how exactly did Subaru die. Aside from setting up the premise of this arc, this is the beginning of the many fears Natsuki Subaru gains throughout this story. The one in particular that is created here is the fear of losing his relationships over the course of loops. That relationships for someone like him are not permanent, and he can lose them at any period in time. For that, and being a decent way to start the arc's conflict, I'll place it here. The second death. I don't have much to say about it, and I really want to head on to this next death. So I'm just gonna place it in the I tier, because I cannot for the life of me think of what to talk about when it comes to this death. Arc 2's third death, as well as the infamous scene of Rem torturing Subaru followed by Rum's mercy kill. Now moving aside from the fact that this death became fuel for Rem haters and Emilia supporters as reasons why Subaru rejects her, this is an excellent death by itself. Not only does the sky look absolutely beautiful in this moment, but Kobayashi's voice acting is also at point. voicing his struggles and how he had tried so hard to do everything he could to help the Oni twins, yet still being forced to be tortured in a situation like this, with Rem's only response that she had no memory of such a thing. It is also where we're introduced to the witch's scent as a whole. Absolutely beautiful death. Fight me if you want, but this goes in the absolute top of bangers. And 2 in a row. Subaru's cliff jump is such a banger as well. Straight bed playing in this scene is absolute perfection. My favorite intro song in the entire show alongside Theater D. Subaru picking up his resolve in this scene is, in my opinion, one of the scenes where you can tell whether someone will like this show or not. The other two litmus tests per se being episode 13 and then episode 18 to see if anyone will truly like this show. A coward like Subaru gambling it all to just save the 2 Oni sisters who protected him when there was no one else to hold his hand, and even with fear that he may not return by death once again. He still puts it all up in the air to just save them too and jumps straight into the pointed rocks without any fear in his eyes. People glaze Aura Monster, but this moment has far more aura than Aura Monster could ever have, with a vibrant sunset to accompany us at this moment. I seriously don't have any complaints with this absolute banger of a death. Now we can really begin a time when deaths in this series started going crazy. Arc 3's first death, no questions asked, I'm putting this in absolute banger. This is the first death in episode 15, which is without question a masterpiece. But even putting aside the rest of episode 15, the decision to not play the opening, the segment without any distraction from episode 14's conclusion with Rem's death, Theater D in the background really only made this death hit harder. More than the way Subaru dies in particular being surprising, it's what happens moments before his death that makes this one so impactful. Seeing all the corpses of everyone in the mansion slowly by slowly, drowning himself in self-blame, as he can't help but realize how useless he is to not have allowed this to happen. Even the death itself introduces even more questions, because you don't even learn how exactly Subaru dies in this scene until far later and coming off episode 14's beautiful death. I find it impossible in my heart to put this anywhere besides absolute cinema. Subaru's death against Park, and probably the most famous Subaru death by far. In my opinion, it is absolutely garbage and an overrated death. It doesn't even make the list of the top 10 best deaths in all of ReZero. I'll place it in the mid tier. I'm joking, don't click off the video, please. It's a joke. Without a question, it's gonna go into the peak fiction tier, and in my opinion, is still the single best death there is in the series. I don't think many people disagree, but it is such a high level that I still doubt that the anime will be able to create a death that is more impactful than this one. It is just gonna be so difficult to somehow match the despair that you feel as a Requiem of Silence plays. With Subaru, with the little energy left himself, dragging Rem's dead, twisted body in the mansion, with his surroundings slowly getting colder and colder. There shouldn't have been any reason to do that. Rem was already dead, so he had been better off just killing himself, but he still didn't do that. Why? It wasn't out of respect for Rem's words that she loved him, but rather because Subaru moved himself with the opposite of love, hatred. Hatred for Beatrice had caused all of this, and so even though it was absolutely useless to continue onward, Subaru still continued in a failed loop to see if there was any way he could have dealt with Beatrice. But of course, nothing like that was gonna happen. Subaru breaks down in tears, realizing that the same fate as last time has fallen upon the people in the mansion and the village, as he shouts Beatrice's name only for a sudden, large beast to spout out his head from the mansion. With an ominous message directed towards Subaru, his head falls off and the credits roll as the snow accumulates around Natsuki Subaru. Peak fiction, I don't think I need to say much more here. Subaru's death to Puck. Another beautiful death in a certain way, seeing Subaru's emotional collapse after realizing he cannot do anything at all no matter what he may try, and his own attempt at trying to tell Emilia about the truth only leading to her own death, being sent away to a different place to die with her dead body in his hands. Subaru's own failures to get the support of any of the other candidates continues to carry himself into his image of how useless of a person he truly is, with him refusing to understand that it is impossible for someone like him to give up. It's oddly sort of relieving to see Puck stop Beatrice from turning Emilia's body to shreds, but at the same time, the opposite of that, seeing as how he leaves Subaru with the same words that Beatrice had directed towards him, that he was truly slothful. Subaru's own mental image had already collapsed by this point, so this was sort of the final nail in the coffin for him, to realize he's no good at all, segments into one of the most beautiful episodes in the entire show, from Zero. Another for the absolute cinema tier, the final death of season 1, and it's not an easy one to watch. Subaru's assisted death at the hands of Julius and Felix is still one of the deaths I go back to the most, with Stay Alive playing in the background of the scene that complements so much that I can't even put into words. It's absurd how well a song about staying alive playing during a scene that is the exact opposite of that can move me. Kobayashi's begging and even his impression of Beetlejuice is just so great and nervy to see, and seeing Julius struggle to kill Subaru after having finally considered him a friend. Do I need to say more? I don't believe many of you will disagree with this one. Absolute cinema. Season 2 Subaru's first death is self-inflicted after learning what happened to Rem against Gartney. It isn't one of the more flashy or memorable deaths in my opinion, but seeing Subaru's willingness to go through Beetlejuice once again, just so that he could ensure Rem's safety, is sad, and Subaru willingly committing, even though there wasn't any loss on paper, introduces us to the whole idea of Subaru not valuing his own life in face of when he can serve to help the people around him to be safe, no matter what kind of adversity Subaru has to go through. I'm not the biggest Rem fan, so it didn't move me much, but I do understand if you're a big Rem fan, you might have that opinion. I'll put it in the I tier. Subaru's death to Elsa is, in my opinion, not a very memorable death per se, at least in my eyes. It does serve as a very cool plot twist that yeah, that crazy ass woman from Arc 1 is now back to kill Subaru in the mansion this time, but I don't really have any personal attachment to it beyond that. And it doesn't really give us any crazy revelation besides that Elsa is in the mansion to kill Subaru. The death itself is also not very unique to say, so I don't really have much reason to rank this highly, and not even many words in general to use talking about it. Mid tier. A very underrated death in my opinion is the one with Beatrice and Subaru inside the library, the death itself in the source material. But that aside, since we're judging the anime version, the best part of it has to be Beatrice's expression seeing Subaru fall to the ground and die after getting stabbed by Elsa, right after we learn of everything about her quote-unquote gospel, and everything which obviously conflicts with how we see Beatrice act with Subaru, and her whole act of indifference that she had generally maintained throughout the series. Crumbling with this one moment makes for a very cool death, even if the way Subaru died wasn't anything special. And here we have this death. I'm not sure if I should even say something when it comes to this death. What even is there to talk about? It's absolutely, by far, the most horrifying death Subaru's faced. Even worse than the season 4 loop, simply because of how badly this mentally shot Subaru in the head, to the point that he would have broken had Echidna not saved him by bringing him into the Castle of Dreams. And just seeing Subaru getting eaten up by all the rabbits is just horrifying. The original source even going as far to say that Subaru basically did not die until every part of his body had been eaten until the moment his brain was eaten, with the rabbits entering through any holes and creating more holes in that process. Is just by far the worst physical death Subaru has suffered, not to mention just how much of a switch up something like cute looking rabbits is into them being murderous, infinitely repeating swarms of rabbits. With a death like this that has such creative insight behind it and surprise, it's just hard for me to not place this anywhere outside of peak fiction, with how horrible this death was for both Subaru as well as me, right behind season 1 episode 15. The Kiss of Death is honestly the most underrated death loop by far. It's actually so sad that more people don't talk about this horrifying loop. Seeing Subaru, who's already almost dead after getting minced up by the Great Rabbit, and getting welcomed back by the yandere in the tomb who doesn't even notice that Subaru is about to die at all. As if there's absolutely nothing wrong at all with the wounds Subaru has gotten from the rabbit, not even being shown until the end with this horrifying OST in the background as Subaru gets a lap pillow from Emilia. Even for how much of a bomb season 2's production was, I could not imagine them having done this scene better at all because of how creepy they were able to make Emilia seem, with a smile. And a small thing that most people don't notice with Emilia kissing Subaru in the end is that, if you recall, Emilia quite literally mentions later how she thought kissing would lead to her conceiving a child with Subaru in the epilogue of season 2. And I don't want to point out the intentions of an Emilia that maybe could have noticed that Subaru is going for a long slumber. Top of absolute cinema. Direction like this is why I love ReZero deaths. That's all for season 2. Season 3's first death is once again an absolute cinema moment, with there being nearly 90 minutes of build up to this death in particular as we see our cast interact in peace for what will be the last time for a while, with malicious theatre being a great way to start off this season's fairly small death count. And seeing how a crowd of people just start clapping in appraisal for a woman that is about to drop a child from the top of the building of a church with no empathy at all is straight up creepy. I do think they could have chosen a better OST to play during the scene, but it's just a small nitpick from my end. Bottom of absolute cinema. Pretty convenient considering the name of this chapter also has relevance to cinema. I do have a small nitpick on how this death just kind of cuts apart where Subaru is competent and just has him immediately fall to Sidious and her chains. But besides that, it is genuinely visually one of the best deaths Subaru has, even if it doesn't have much personal impact per se by the death itself. But just the way Subaru dies through a heart attack while getting choked out in the chains with no censorship at all is just so cool. And seeing this horrifying death up front is nothing to ignore at all. Banger tier. This death is one of the most disappointing ones in my opinion compared to the source material. The problem here is that the death kind of happens and just moves on from it. A death where Subaru is cut in half like Gojo. I feel like it should have at least been dealt with more care than that. Even with Reinhard's expression of seeing Subaru die like that, I feel was underwhelming with what could have been done instead if he was just given a little bit more time to breathe and for the death to properly settle in there. I guess Subaru does look pretty cool with his hair down there, and that's a plus point, but still mid tier. On to the 4th season. Not much to say about the first Hell Snipe death. It's cool and serves a good introduction to the Player Death's Watchtower, as well as being a very fast death with a checkpoint that's extremely close by. Makes it one of the cooler deaths in the I tier. But the more important death here is the next one. The far more exciting one is the second one. Not only do we have to sadly see our best girl, Beatrice, get killed by the Hell Snipe, but also have to see the absolute tragic scene of Subaru getting shot down and then Beatrice crying over his dying corpse for a good few seconds in complete silence, only for the light to return once again and this time kill Beatrice, leaving behind a barely alive Subaru to get minced by another final Hell Snipe to kill him for good this time. The reaction to this death is also a part of why I love this death, with how much Subaru freaks out internally and tries to lock in afterwards immediately to not let something like that happen again. It's really sad that the part of Subaru wiping away Betty's tear with invisible providence was cut, since if that wasn't cut, I'd surely be able to place this death in the absolute cinema tier without any hesitation. But keeping that cut in mind, it's hard for my heart to do that. Banger tier. Peak Fiction. Yes, I'm already putting it there since I don't really have any doubts in my mind that it belongs there. Not only is competing for by far the best production value when it comes to how the death itself is presented, alongside the direction itself being incredible in this scene, it shouldn't come as a surprise that this death is ranked so highly up here. I just love this loop for how horrifying it is to imagine an Anastasia randomly replacing Irina after her lower half is erased by rum. Subaru getting a chance to see her gut and intestines fall out, alongside more of her body, with Beatrice ending it all with her eating Subaru. I hope this death is self-explanatory enough as to why it's so high, so that I don't take much more of your time with my yapping. Emilia Subaru's death is a bit similar to Arc 2 Subaru's death, in that Subaru doesn't really fully process that he died properly, similar to the other death, as he views this one as just a dream he had of the future. But this death is more so the setup of the 3 other deaths after this one, with there being someone who pushed Subaru off the stairs. So I consider it a good death in how it helps to introduce this person who pushes Subaru, which comes a really important point for Subaru's paranoia in the next episodes, that there's someone who's out here to get him. A very disturbing death to say the least I can. Subaru's died in a lot of horrifying ways, and many of them were honestly far worse than this. But that was a Subaru who was used to dying. This is a Subaru who has no experience with death. The others talking about how they don't feel like the new Natsuki Subaru is reliable to rely upon, like they did with the previous. As Subaru just falls down the stairs one by one from all sides is just tragic to see, as his face slowly gets mutilated from it, and even his arms, legs by the end being completely separated from him by the end, before he just crashes into the ground to meet his death. It's just such a terrifying death for what would have been such one if it wasn't that it happened to an inexperienced Subaru, and even his reaction afterwards with a new version of the Call of the Witch is just sad as hell to see. I didn't expect to be so impacted by this death either, but White Fox really surpassed my expectations with this one. Absolute cinema. Aura monster aside, this part of the episode is so slept on. It's not as good as the previous episode's second death, but this one is still so good, with us seeing how earlier Rem wasn't in her regular wheelchair, where Ram was found dead with the person who ended up killing Subaru being someone who looked similar to Ram's little sister. The build up to the date itself is great, as we see how Subaru discovers that everyone he wanted to kill just a few minutes ago was already being killed by some unknown force, and even his attempt to kill someone like Padarash actually just straight up falters when it comes to doing it. I like this death a lot, and this loop as a whole is one of my favorites in the entire story. Absolute cinema tier. I'm gonna add a new tier for this tier list, just for this death, and yeah, that's about where it should go. This death is so wildly different from the others that I find it hard to place it in the same tier as every other one. I will not elaborate. Go watch this video if you want to see 12 minutes of me yapping about this episode, if you want to understand why I placed it here. That's all of Subaru's deaths, at least for now. If you have any disagreements, then the comment section is as always free to be used to voice any of your thoughts.